Hello and very warm welcome to all. Welcome to IAAPI webinar series, session 20. Friends, we have traveled a long journey in the past 7 months. We have done 19 webinars so far, and today we are standing on the 20th one. I very warmly welcome office leaders, board of directors of IAAPI, distinguished guests, and the speaker. Welcome to IAAPI webinar series, session 20. Let us quickly go through the guidelines. The webinar guidelines are as you can read on the screen. Please note that your microphone and video has been switched off for the convenience of viewers. Dear guests, in case we find any audio or video switched on in between, we'll request you to switch it off again. But in case we find too much of a disturbance, we'll have no option but to keep you into the waiting room in such case. Please follow it religiously. Please check and rename your company name and last name so that it's convenient for us to address you. Question and answer session will be in the end. Please type your questions in the chat window. We shall try to address your questions. That will be at the end of the session. Friends, in the past, as I told you, we have done 19 webinars. The webinars list is here with you on the screen. Those who have missed it can always go to IAAPI's website, and all the webinars are uploaded over there. You can go through them. If we talk about the webinars, we have covered the majority of the subjects, whether it be technical, commercial, marketing, other strategies, everything we have tried to cover up. And it is a whole encyclopedia by itself. You can just log into the IAAPI website and go to the webinars which we have already uploaded. Right? The last webinar we had was opening of amusement facilities post-lockdown. Let me congratulate you all and announce that 15th October, we have been permitted to start operating the parks. And to cover up that, we had done a session on opening of amusement facilities post-lockdown. The session was taken by Lieutenant Anand Lamade. He explained in detail to us what we should do and what we should not do post-lockdown and pre-opening now. So friend, today's session, the session is on resilience during uncertain times. During these uncertain times of crisis, our industry has faced severe hardship and distress, barely staying afloat in the deep waters of physical and financial adversity. The mental health of the workforce has also deteriorated to a great extent. Due to this, often we succumb to extremes of the pressure. Either we fall prey to toxic productivity culture, trying to do more in less time, or we become lethargic as a result of feelings of failure, inadequacy, motivation, low motivation, ready to poor self-concept. If we talk about productivity culture, toxic productivity, I think some of us have already done it and got our hands getting into various streams of fields which we felt are good to produce in at that particular moment, and finally we understood that yes, it was not a right step, but things which have done have done. So we'll be relearning it from Ms. Sangeeta today on what we should do and how we should do it. The need of the hour is to build resilience, that is, the capacity to recover rather quickly and efficiently from difficulties. Now is the time to learn how to survive and also thrive during such trying times. The reptilian part of our brain is designed in such a way to respond to difficult situations, as many of us, you may have heard the fight or flight response. Today's session with our esteemed guest is Sangeeta Chandran. Ms. Sangeeta Chandran is the global head of TCS Cares, the mental health and well-being program of Tata Consultancy Services. She is a certified integrative counseling therapist, relationship counselor, parenting coach, and holistic well-being advocate. She is the founder of Dandelions Talk, an initiative to promote mental and emotional health awareness and support. She's got over 20 years of experience. She has worked across industries like education, hospitality, EPS, and technology. She has a span of experience in corporate communications, CSR, diversity, ethics, and safety and well-being. She's also a student pilot and a car rallythler, a blogger and movie reviewer. She walks the dogs, does yoga and meditation to keep fit and agile. Her favorite quote is, if you're looking for that one person who has the power to change your life, look in the mirror. With these words, I'll probably invite Ms. Sangeeta to join in and share her experience to us. Over to Ms. Sangeeta, please.
Thank you so much, Anuj, and thank you to all of you for being here and for this opportunity to talk to everyone today. Before we start, I want to share with you just something which has happened this morning, since this morning. So, I'm sure that you know that your, office bearers of your organization are very, very thorough people, and they have been doing excellent planning for this session. And, they were in touch with me. We have talked about this session. They sent me a link to do a testing and everything. And whatever you say, despite all the preparations, something or the other can go wrong at any given time. And today, technology decided that it's not going to be my friend. And I just could not get my laptop to start working. And we definitely had to very quickly think of plan B. And we quickly shared the presentation, decided to log on the phone, did a testing with that, all that. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that life is never ever certain. There are so many uncertainties from the smallest things to the largest things. Padma, can I request you to move to the next slide? So, yeah, so Padma has got my presentation and she's going to help me today. Padma, next slide, please. Yes. So as I think all of you are probably experiencing this. And again, firstly, big congratulations to all of you that your industry is going to open up from 15th of October, which will bring with it its own set of excitement, own set of challenges. So we live in a VUCA world, which is volatile, uncertain, it is complex, it is ambiguous, it is always throwing at us challenges which we are never ever expecting. Next slide, please. So everybody in this world is experiencing COVID. I think you will all agree that this is one pandemic which, at least in our lifetime, we have never faced anything like this. The world has never faced anything like this. So earlier, if there was any sort of crisis situation, whether financial or otherwise, it was limited to a part of the world. But this is one which has paralyzed the entire world. And the entire world is dealing with not just a pandemic, but it is actually dealing with something called the social infodemic. And it is this social infodemic, which is in addition to the pandemic itself, which is causing a huge amount of uncertainty and stress and anxiety to all of us. So what is happening to us? Next slide, please. What is happening to us? Let's understand our psyche. I think, Anuji was just, in the introduction talking a little bit about this, that what is happening to us, and let us understand how we react, how our brain reacts in times of crisis, right? So, as he mentioned, that there is a part of our brain, which is the reptilian brain, which is so ancient. It has been with us even before we became Homo sapiens, right? It is the one which always taught us survival through flight or fight. And whenever we are in crisis, this part of the brain is the one which begins to take over our more sophisticated part of the brain. And the way we respond is through stress, panic, anxiety. All the actions that we take come from that part of the brain. So whether it is the fact that if we, in our building, there is somebody who has got COVID, and we feel like now everybody in the building is suddenly going to get COVID, or whether it is when we see somebody without a mask and we get extremely angry because that person is probably not only, being casual, but actually putting us also at risk. And any of these things come from that reptilian brain, and that is something that we have to understand. So if we have to deal with today's situation, we have to firstly become very conscious about our own responses, the responses of our body, the responses of our hormones, the responses of our mind. Every single thing, we have to heighten those sense of consciousness and response, and only then will we be able to deal with what is happening to us. Because the more we allow what is happening to us to submerge us, the more we will be in control of what is happening to us rather than we being in control of what is happening. Next slide, please. So we're talking about more and more the conversation around mental health, the more and conversations around everything that is happening to us. And if you can see on the slide, what we are trying to say really is that your state of mental health, equilibrium, well-being is not a static state. It is a constantly moving state, and it can move from being in an extremely depressed and anxious situation, as you can see from one point on the scale, to moving up to being at 3, where you're generally coping. So if somebody is asking you, kaise ho yaar, so you're saying हाँ ठीक है सब कुछ चल रहा है. Or you could be feeling very vital and feeling totally at the stage of 5, total bliss. So it could be any of these stages, but usually our mental health, if it stays between the state of 2, 3, and 4, which is the most normal state to be in, we are doing fine. We are doing great, in fact. So being in the state of bliss can only be very momentary, and being in a state of despondency should be momentary. That is something that we have to remember and understand. So moving on to the uh, next slide. This is called, it's a slide, and just now, because it's in PDF for you, you probably, yes, here it is. So this is called the emotional guidance scale. And I really request you to pay, deep attention to what is being said on this slide, because what is really important to understand is that ultimately there is an upward spiral and there is a downward spiral to our emotions. And what does the downward spiral do? It start off with a stage of being pessimistic and saying, oh, life is really bad, nothing is going to happen, all the world is really coming to an end, ye to kalyug ka zamana hai. So all these things we will say, and we will be feeling overwhelmed, we'll be feeling bored, we'll be frustrated, irritated, then we will start to blame the world, we will begin to worry, there will be anger against the system, there will be a feeling of what can I do to really all this, somehow somebody has done great harm to me, and how do I correct that, and feeling powerless, completely powerless, because you can't do anything. On the other hand is your upward spiral, where you start off with a feeling of being all right, and then it moves up, and you build your strength, you build your emotions to feeling positive, having a sense of belief that things can get better, enthusiasm, a quest for knowledge, searching for how to make things right, appreciating others and yourself, beginning to feel a passion and commitment towards something that you want to commit to, and ultimately feeling a sense of great empowerment, great joy, great love, great freedom. And this is not only related to COVID. This is something which we can keep, thoughts on, being conscious on throughout our lives. So remember, every time you are in a state of being overwhelmed or pessimistic, if you allow yourself, you can go down that spiral very quickly. And if you control that and allow yourself to be positive, you can go up that positive spiral and upward spiral, and really be in a very, very good state. So this is about how the emotional guidance scale works. And I really want all of you to remember this and visualize this. I'm a great believer in visualizing things. So the minute you're pessimistic, if you think of yourself going down, you will remember and you will be able to catch yourself. And the other way, you can see yourself going up. Next slide, please. So, but having said that, let us accept right now we are in a crisis mode. We are in a situation where there is lot of anxiety, lot of panic, and I just want all of you maybe to share in the chat box, and I just want to put on my chat box here to hear from all of you. How many of you are feeling any of these sort of symptoms, and what one of them or two of them, if you can name, it will give me a sense of where you all are. So I'm waiting, guys. If you could just put into the chat box what you are going through in terms of where you are right now. Are you feeling any of these things? Are you feeling all right? Are you feeling hopeful, optimistic? What is it that you're feeling? Please put it in the chat box. While you're putting it, I'm having a quick sip of my chai. So, Padma, is it that I can't see anybody's answers, or is nobody answering? Padma? Ah, I can see. I can see your answers. You're feeling optimistic. Very nice, Anand. I'm glad to see that. Okay, so I could not see how many people responded because I'm on my phone. As I said, this is Plan B. But do sort of take stock of what you're feeling right now. And as we are saying in the next slide, if you're going through a feeling of uncertainty, there are some very basic things which you need to keep track of. And here are some of those things which are there on your screen. First and the biggest one is to maintain a routine. So, during this time where everybody has been at home, families there, wife, husband, children, parents, everybody's at home and everybody's routine has gone for a six. And the biggest thing to make your life certain, at least in the moment, is to maintain a routine and get some certainty around your routine. Second is to be active, because the minute you are exercising, you're releasing great amount of goodwill, happy hormones in your body. So even a half an hour of, whether it is walking, whether it is yoga, which is actually more than enough, no need to do more than this exercise, to do that, and release those happy hormones. Breathe deeply, try to sleep well. How many of you are not being able to sleep? And that also will be helped if you exercise, if you maintain a routine, if your circadian rhythm can be maintained, you will be able to have some sort of certainty in your life. Living in the here and now, and this is a very big one. It's actually quite difficult if you really think about it, right? But COVID has really taught us that living in the here and now is the only way. If I had spoken to you about this last year, and said, guys, everybody should live in the here and now, everyone would have said, ye na thoda, ye Guruji type statements hai, and it's not really possible to do. But I think you will all agree that during this time, during COVID times, living in the here and now is really the only way. The only thing you can do is plan for the next day and maybe plan for another week ahead, because things change so fast that if you don't live now, and you're constantly living in the future, you're constantly going to be in a state of upheaval and constantly going to be in panic, right? The other thing is to identify and accept the boundaries of impact. What is it that you can control? And only focus on that. So Modi ji is busy trying to manage our country. The CM is busy trying to do something. Our BMC, commissioner is busy trying to manage various things, and that is theirs to manage. What is it that we can manage? How can we manage ourselves? How can we manage our home? How can we manage our teams? How can we manage whatever it is that we need to do with our business? Focus only on that and forget about the rest. And to help you to do that, monitor and curate your social media. And this is the biggest one currently that we all need to do, because social media or news that we see is one of the biggest contributors to the stress and anxiety and panic that is currently being faced in the world. This has been said even by the chairman of the WHO, who says that the infodemic is far worse than the pandemic. So how do we monitor our social media? It is, what do you do in the morning? How conscious are you? How quickly uh, uh, you know and we'll deal with that, Abhikandu, about the sense of guilt and things like that, right? So how do you manage that? How do you monitor your social media? What is it that comes on your timeline? So as I'm sure you know very well, that the things that you will click on, it is that kind of content which will always come on your timeline. So be very careful in curating your social media. I'm not saying stop using social media, because social media can be good, but curate your social media. Look for positive messaging, watch some TED Talks, listen to some inspirational messaging. Watch dog and cat videos. I love them because they're so funny and they're so light-hearted and innocent that they really make you feel good, right? So do all these things, and these are things in which you can cope with any sort of stress or anxiety. Next slide, please, Pushpa. So I want to teach you a couple of tools. I want to give you a couple of tools which you can use actually to deal with your anxiety, right? And this is a very powerful one. So this one, as you can see that the statement, it says, weigh your possibilities versus the probabilities. Now, what does this mean? Basically, if we are thinking that something is possible, then we are allowing our mind to just, run away with its imagination, right? Take an example. It is possible that I will get COVID. Very, very possible. And the likelihood is very high because, look at how many people are getting it. But what is the probability? If I'm taking proper care, if I'm wearing my mask, if I'm keeping my social distance, if I'm washing my hands regularly, if I'm doing steam, if I'm doing gargle, then the probability of it happening is low, right? So just like this, if you are able to weigh possibility versus probability of any problem in your life, you can actually, it's a very, very powerful tool and is used by several leaders in this world, because ultimately that what if is something that we can avoid, and we can actually look at what is actually going to happen and take steps towards it. So again, coming back to COVID, probability is that it will be very low, right? But next slide, please. But there is still a possibility that it could happen. And if it is to happen, what is the fear? What is the biggest fear you have around it, right? Turn around and face that fear. Turn around and say that, you know what, I've been running from this, but let me face it and let me see what is the worst that can happen. And when you begin to look at the worst case scenario of anything, you will realize that what is probably going to happen to you is probably not going to be that. And even if it is going to be that, you can plan for it. So worst case scenario could be that, yes, I've got COVID. How can I plan for it? How can I find out which are the hospitals where, in case it happens, I will go? What is the support system that is required? How will I quarantine myself in the house? How much knowledge can I get about this subject which will inform me enough to empower me, right? So these are two techniques. One is weighing the possibilities versus the probabilities. And the second is the phrase, what you resist persists, what you face, you will be able to embrace. Now, all of you will say, Sangeeta, ye to nice, yeah, very nice. You're coming on this webinar and, giving us all this gyan. But it will be gyan if you don't use it. And it will be useful information if you put it in practice. So that is something that I want to urge you all to pick up any small problem that you have. And after this session, to apply these two techniques to both anything like that and see if it helps you. So that when a bigger problem will come, you will actually be able to help yourself. Next slide. Another thing is, of course, simple things about how can you control your sense of panic in the moment. So if any of you or your family members or friends or family, anybody is going through a sense of panic, how can you help yourself or help other people to control that panic in that moment? It is very important. So this is called the 5 4 3 2 1 technique. It is called the grounding technique, and there are many grounding techniques like this one, where you can distract yourself basically with 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can feel, 3 things that you can hear. For example, I can hear the bird chirping outside, or the dog barking, or the cooker is I can hear it in the kitchen. you know uh, 2 things that you can smell: the smell of perfume, which you might have just used, or aftershave, which you might have just used, and 1 thing that you can taste. So picking up something small, little bit of chini, and putting it in your mouth, something that you can taste. So in a situation of panic, if you use this tool, it is extremely effective, and you will actually begin to sense a certain amount of calm, and then you can move forward in dealing with whatever else the problem is, right? Next slide, please. So, this is a quote by Viktor Frankl. I don't know how many of you know who Viktor Frankl is. So, Viktor Frankl was a psychologist who was Jewish, and he was in a concentration camp, and he wrote this very beautiful book called Man's Search for Meaning. And if you get hold of that book, please read it. It is life-changing. And in that, he says, everything can be taken from a person, but the last of human freedoms, which is to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. And this is not, he doesn't say this out of just theory. He says it out of having experienced the circumstances of a concentration camp. Please do read this book and do make a note of it. It is life-changing. It's called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. So why are we looking at this? Why are we talking about what Viktor Frankl says, right? Next slide. So if, the choice is something that we have, ultimately, if ultimately everything comes down to choice, how much of a choice do we have? Another small exercise for all of you in the chat window, please. So how much of your happiness actually depends upon A, your own actions and decisions, or B, your genes, what you're born with, or C, your circumstances? So what do you believe? You can put it in order A, B, C, put it in the chat window. In what is your, choice? How much choice do you have? If you can put it in the chat window, I'll be able to see it. So is it A, B, C, or A, C, B, or just A, or just C? A, C, B. Thank you, Abikendu. Anybody else who's thinking and answering? A, C, B. A, C. I like all you guys. Yeah, you're very positive people, I have to say. Nice to see. So here is what it actually is. Next slide, Sushma. So whether we like it or not, 50% of what happens to us is our genes. But 40% is our actions, and only 10% is our circumstances. So we cannot control our genes, and 10% of the circumstances we cannot control, but 40% of what happens to us is in our control. And it has been shown by more studies that what we do in our actions over a period of time actually begins to influence our genetic makeup as well. So the 10% which we feel is our circumstances is actually a very small amount, and our actions can actually influence our genes. Our actions can actually influence our circumstances. Very powerful study around happiness, and gives you a lot of food for thought. And obviously it tells us that ultimately the one thing that is in our control, which is our actions, is 40%. So how much it should we give attention to? So how much of our actions should we control? How conscious should we become about what are the actions we take in our life is really something that we have to think about. So next slide. So while this slide is coming up, I want you to think about this, that what are the different kinds of positive emotions. So if we were to think about negative emotions, we can, these days, the biggest words that are being used, right? Stress, anxiety, helplessness, anxiousness, depression, right? All these are the words which we are using these days. But which are the words that we really need to use? What are the words that we need to use? So whether it is, saying compassion or hope, or which I think all of you are feeling now, right? Hope and purpose, you're feeling that already. Acceptance of what is happening around us, empathy, forgiveness, vulnerability, gratitude, mindfulness. So many positive words, and language really matters. What we say to ourselves really matters. So think about what are the words we are using these days? How much of negative words and how many positive words are we using with ourselves and in our conversations around us when we are talking to various people, right? So this is something I want to make sure, again, another lesson for everyone, that use positive words when you talk to yourself. Self-talk is very powerful, and using positive words for yourself is very, very important. Next slide. So then, if we are thinking about, we have to deal with crisis, uncertainty is happening. Who are you? And what happens to you in a crisis, right? So here, as you can see, and I'm sure some of you have seen this analogy, where what are you when you are in hot water? And I want you to answer. Are you a potato who is hard otherwise, but the minute you're in hot water, you turn into mush, you become soft and disintegrate? Or are you an egg, which otherwise is nice and hard and seems to be very, this thing, but inside is a very soft person. But because of circumstances, you have become very hard and hard boiled. In the minute hot water, you're put in hot water, you become a hard boiled egg and cynical. Or are you coffee, which when you're put in hot water actually changes that hot water, changes that environment, enriches that environment, and becomes something that can refresh yourself and others? I want you to put in the chat box, and I want more responses, guys. I need more responses from all of you. Which one are you? Whether you're a potato, whether you're an egg, or whether you're coffee. Thank you, Abhikendu. Abhikendu gets full marks for responsiveness. Guys, other guys, I'm expecting more responses from all of you. Egg. Good. I'm so glad to hear that, Utkarsh, you're acknowledging who you become. It's very important to see that, what you tend to become when in hot water, right? Anybody else? Egg. So basically, when you're put in hot water, you tend to become hard. You tend to feel that, now you need to be so, so in control that something hardens within you, right? All right. So many leaders, let me tell you, and I know that many of you over here are owners of your own businesses, entrepreneurs, and you feel that in circumstances of stress, when you're in hot water, you certainly cannot become a potato and disintegrate, but you do tend to become eggs and become very hard and need to take hard decisions, right? But isn't it a fact that the best way to be would be to be coffee and to actually be able to become enrich the environment around yourself and be refreshed for yourself as well, right? So if you were to look at the next slide is what we were going to talk about today, and that is about resilience. So as Anup ji had mentioned at the beginning, he said one thing about resilience, and he talked about a certain definition of resilience, but I want to take that definition a little further. Please look at the definition which is here on your slide over here. Resilience is the ability to recover from setbacks. It is the ability to adapt to change and keep going. Or, please focus on this, or choose to give up in the face of adversity for the time being so that we can emerge stronger, wiser, and more capable, more able. So, this uh, definition of resilience is a definition which comes from a space of humaneness. Because resilience, if you go forward, and something which we need to build over time or with intentionality. Can you go forward, Padma, please? Is, you can define it in so many different ways. So resilience could mean that, if you're down, you bounce back, you dust yourself off, and up you are, you can move on. And some people might define it to say that, there is nothing like I can't do it, everything I can do. Or is it like this little plant in the concrete where you can even the hardest of circumstances you can still come up, right? Or are you this tree which in the face of anything that is happening, you are still strong and resilient and still stand strong without falling down? Or are you like this bridge? I'm sure many of you seen this, the Golden Gate Bridge. And I'm sure you've heard that basically resilience is something which was used to define the quality of metal, right? Which says that metal which is resilient, which is malleable, which can stand up to pressures, which does not break down, which can change from time to time. So which one do you resonate with most? I want to hear from you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Which one is, according to you, the best definition of resilience? 1. Thank you, Abhikendu. Who else? Anuj. 2. Anybody else? Utkarsh. 4. 4. 4. Yes, Shashi. Anybody else? Okay, great. Ved. 4. Great. So, each one of us has a different definition of resilience, right? But basically, we need to remember that even in being resilient, resilience is not only being the strong stalwart. Resilience is allowing space for comebacks. So between a setback and a comeback, there is a fight back. And in that fight, what is it that you're doing? How are you allowing yourself to even rest, or take a little bit of a breather, take time to think, set out on a different path maybe? And that is what resilience is all about, right? Next slide, please. So what fosters resilience? A lot of work has been done around resilience, and these are really the 5 main things. So one, of course, just like coping, understanding, your boundaries, your scope of control, and knowing that, there is only so much that you can control in life, and the rest of it you have to let it go. Second is flexibility to change. Just like any good bridge, you should be able to be flexible to take the pressures, right? So if a bridge was only hard, it would break down. But it is only because it is tensile, it is flexible, that it can stand up, right? So flexibility to change, the ability to think and say that, this did not work, and so I can do something else, do it differently. All that is very important. Social support, very big part of resilience. So especially for all of the people who are maybe on this call, and people who lead their teams, sometimes you feel that, as a leader, only you are responsible, and that is not so, right? So getting support from each other, getting support from teams, being vulnerable, all these things are very important for resilience. Kindness to self, as we were saying in the definition, humaneness to self before you can even be humane to other people. So don't judge yourself, don't feel that, I have not come out of this, being the strong and sort of leader of the family kind of person that I'm supposed to show up as, right? Be kind to yourself. And last one, very very important, is purpose for all. What is it that you're part of which is bigger than yourself? What is higher than yourself? What are you contributing to, other than, earning a living or looking only at your family or your teams? What else are you contributing to? Because it is, in mental health, it has been shown that, the different hormones which are secreted in our body, dopamine is our happiness hormone, which is released in the moment. So for example, if you buy something new, dopamine is released. And if you somebody gives you a compliment, or on social media somebody gives, the number of likes that you get is all, contributes to dopamine, which gives you an instant sense of happiness. But for long term happiness, you need serotonin, which is released when you do something which is larger than yourself, when you contribute to something and are part of something which is larger than yourself. So think about this, and I'm sure many of you do it already, but that really contributes to your resilience. Next one. So I think we've already spoken a little bit about this, that resilience does not mean just being strong. It is actually ability to deal with something. It means that, everybody could be in distress, and it is okay. It is okay to not be okay. And that is also very important to acknowledge. Next slide. So can we learn resilience? And there's this saying which says, that if there is a time when we need to build our plane as we fly, because as in my introduction, Anubi said that I'm a student pilot, I'm learning how to fly. And this is something that we say in our parlance, that if there is a time to literally learn how to build your plane as you fly, it is this time. And that is true. So we need to, right now there is no time or scope to say that, okay, now मैं gym में जाऊंगा और मैं lift करूंगा weights, and over a period of time I will develop, right? It is now. We have to do it now. So what is it that we can do? Right? Next slide, please. We can build resilience. We can build that muscle, and we can do it. It will take time. It will take intentionality. We can do it for the long term, for our future, but we also need to do it for our now. Right? So what can we do? Next slide. This is the approach which is supposed to be like one of the basic approaches to build resilience, right? So if you want to do that, and as we already spoke about some of the other tools that we have spoken about probabilities and possibilities and facing your fears, building resilience is about stating what are the facts, placing the responsibility where it belongs, and very often which means placing the responsibility with yourself for what is happening to you, right? Reframing what is happening around you. So in the context of your work, for example, till now, amusement parks were closed, and so therefore you needed to state the facts that the parks are closed, there is no income, people may lose their jobs, my business may come to a standstill, and then placing responsibility where it belongs, right? So part of the responsibility lies with the government. Are they going to give us a package which will help us to survive? Responsibility, but what is the responsibility ultimately? What responsibility can I take? Can I plan for the future? Can I speak to my people? Can I bring people on board in ways that we can try and tide this time together? Reframing the problem as it moves, as it shifts. Like yesterday you were thinking about that, but today you're obviously already thinking about how you're going to open up. What is it now that your challenges have suddenly changed, right? How are you going to bring people back? What are the things that you need to do first? How will you keep them safe? How will you try to bring in your customers and make sure that they feel safe, right? So all the things which build resilience is constantly shifting, and you need to reframe your life, your questions, your solutions as things move. And also at the same time being kind to yourself. Give yourself time to be okay. Give yourself time to say that, you know, this COVID is something that nobody has dealt with before, and I'm part of that entire sea of humanity which is dealing with it. And it is okay for me to try something, probably fail at it, try again. And it is okay for me to be taking that time for myself. So all the various things around resilience, and maybe, in this one talk, it is difficult for everyone to absorb this and say that, oh, Sangeeta Chandran came and she said all these things to us and now I'm resilient, I'm going to put it in practice. No, I also understand completely that it will not happen like that. But one step at a time, taking that first step and moving forward from there is the only way. I don't think there is any other way anyway, is there? Next slide, Padma. So here it's a bit of a busy slide, but it is a slide which basically tells you about the various ways in which you can actually focus and build your strength, build your resilience, right? So whether it is managing the stress in your own body, what can you do to feel de-stress? Whether it's your yoga, whether it's your exercise, managing those signs physically and mentally. Um what small things can you do to help yourself to relax, calm yourself? Because remember, till you actually do that, if you try to start doing something else when you are not fully whole, you will probably fail at it. So it is very important to build that inner tensile strength before you can do anything else. Recognize and reward yourself for who you are. So focus on your strengths. It is, you've been somebody who's done fantastic things in the past, and you will do so even in the future. But at the moment you may feel that everything is not quite where it is, it's coming to an end, right? How much joy can you find? The little things of joy that you can find, whether, as I said, for me, dog and cat videos are very funny because I own two dogs, and to me they're the biggest source of joy, right? Find what it is. What is it that for yourself that brings little things there? It could be just a meal with your family, it could be spending time with your children, it could be taking time completely for yourself and doing something that you want. What is it that will help you to find joy and find also meaningful activities to do? So you are a father, you're a mother, you're a owner of a business, you're a boss, but what are you for yourself? Find that and spend some time doing things around that as well. And of course, as we said, create a community, create a social network, create a safety net for yourself, and be a safety net for other people as well. Next slide, please. So as part of resilience, another huge part of this is gratitude. And gratitude is one of the most potent tools. And gratitude, again, as I was saying earlier, it is not some sort of concept, just a concept. It is actually something which has now been studied, and it actually makes changes in your brain chemistry. So expressing gratitude. Next slide, please. Acknowledging what you have. Eckhart Tolle says that what you already have in your life is really the foundation for all abundance. And we very often say this, right? I mean, the biggest saying for gratitude is the one which says that I felt sad that I did not have shoes till I saw a person who did not have feet. And that is the biggest essence of gratitude. And what are you grateful for? So you may have a situation where the business is not doing, but what is that little silver lining that you can find in your life that you can be thankful for, that you can feel blessed for? So it could start, next slide, please. It starts with you. Firstly, be so firstly, be, kind to yourself, and say something nice for yourself. When quite honestly, like literally when you're expressing it to yourself in the mirror, when you start talking to yourself, it's first thing in the morning, what do you say to yourself? Be nice to yourself. In the moment, don't wait always for something big to happen to celebrate, right? The smallest of things are worth being grateful for. The smallest of things are worth appreciating, worth celebrating. Keep a gratitude journal, write down daily, literally what you're grateful for. So, remember that, whenever you think about things which are going wrong, uh, we always say, why me? Why is this God? Why is this happening to me? But remember, we never say this when we have a lot of things, right? So when we think, why me? Why is this happening to me? Remember that there's so many people who don't have what we have. So many people who are, probably suffering different things and maybe worse than what we are suffering. Does not mean that, oh, so you know what, I'm um, I'm just going to, do whatever I want, and oh, chalo mera to ghar hai, wo log to chal chal ke apne ghar ja rahe hain, and so I'm grateful, right? That actually is an opportunity for us to do something for somebody else and show gratitude, because we have more than them. So gratitude is one of the most potent ways to build resilience. And that is something which I thought I must include in this session when I talk to you. So, as almost the last, Pushpa, can you just move the slide? I really want all of you to please answer this question. And I'm going to wait for a long time to hear you all say, what is it that you feel grateful for today? What is the smallest thing that you could be feeling grateful for? I'd like to hear you say, as a practice for today, in the chat box, please. Thank you so much, Shashikanji. Good health of self and family. Very big one. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, Anandji. Food on the plate. Very true. I'm healthy and my family is too. Yes, health today is one of the biggest ones. We just cannot take that for granted, isn't it? Who else? Anybody else would like to say something? One or two more people I'd like to hear from. Okay. So even if you're not going to say it over here, my existence, very true. Very true. Just the fact that God has given us this life, right? Respect that you get. Beautiful. Yes, absolutely. So many things to be grateful for. And, gratitude can sound like, again, able to keep coming to my workplace every day throughout. Wow. I mean, that is a big one, because most of us are now working from home, right? And on one level, we are like, the working from home is fantastic. Or on the other level, we are like, when can we go back to office? Absolutely. So, just the fact that we can do that, something to be grateful for. And the fact that maybe you have your own vehicle and you can actually go to work on your own instead of having to struggle in a public transport, being worried about, what will happen if I'm on a public transport. Great to be grateful for, right? Absolutely. So many things that we can be grateful for my freedom. Absolutely. The fact that, we have the freedom to live lives that we want, the freedom to express ourselves in so many different ways. Have to worry parking with one own car. Ajay. See, always looking at different things, right? So with gratitude comes various problems, but वो problem के साथ में silver lining हमेशा ढूंढ लेना चाहिए. Correct? So look for the silver lining. Always look for the silver lining. When things look very dark, look for the silver lining. And you will see that, slowly the light at the end of the tunnel will begin to come, and you will find the solutions for yourself. So lastly, and I want to recap, and then I'm happy to discuss and take questions. So last slide, please. Next slide, please, Pushpa. Yes. So just to recap, choose emotions with consciousness. Choose your words with consciousness. Begin to build your muscle, your resilience muscle. आज से ही उसका exercise शुरू कर दीजिए. Gratitude. Express for small and big things. Build your social networks, your safety nets for yourself. Remember that somebody should be there to catch you when you're falling, right? And in the same way, be there for somebody else when they are falling. Find your flow, enjoy your life. Find something that you like for yourself, only for yourself. Doesn't have to belong to anybody else. Find something to be part of which is bigger than yourself, right? So all these things are very important, and COVID has given us the opportunity to actually do these things if we really choose to change our perspective on life. And is it possible to do? Absolutely, it is very much possible to do. Is it easy to do? Probably not that easy. But if we set our hearts and mind to it, we can flourish. We can very much flourish. So, with that, next slide, please. I want to come back to the whole thought about VUCA, which is volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, gray, dark, right? Our lives. And then it can also be, next slide, please. VUCA can mean something else completely, right? It can actually mean vision. It can mean having something to look forward for, understanding ourselves and understanding others, having compassion for ourselves and compassion for others, developing agility to change in this world where we have probably, been stuck for a long time. But how can we, in this constantly uncertain world, how can we be agile? So it is giving us, VUCA is also giving us this. And so it is our prism, which is the VUCA we want to look at. Is it the first one or is it this one? And that is your choice. Last slide, please. And you can choose what you want to be, whether you want to be the potato or the egg, or do you want to become coffee and be, change your environment, change the world, change life for yourself, and change life for people that are around you and love you. Thank you so much. Last slide, please. So, Anoopji, Anilji, as I said, I wanted to go through this, and we can stop sharing the presentation, because what I'd really like is to take questions, to take suggestions, to take comments, whatever it is. But whenever we are doing these things, the how does one cope with dishonesty? Can I see that question again? Or Anoopji, could you help me, because I'm on my phone? My
Uh, yeah, Ms. Sangeeta. First of all, thank you so very much for making us understand about resilience and ways and guides and tricks to handle it. So probably I'll start up with the question answer sessions now. It was very interactive session, so probably some of the questions you've already answered in were there. I would request the guests to kindly put in the questions in the chat window. I'll start reading up with them. The first one is from Mr. Ajay. He says, how does one cope up with dishonesty, which some people took to during lockdown?
So, well, I think this is not, see, anything that comes up in crisis, when somebody does something to us which harms us, it is not easy for us to let that go, right? But if we were able to see that, what happened to that person, maybe that person is not as strong as we are, and so therefore they've crumbled completely, and their value system has crumbled, right? So it is clear that crisis can really show us who we are. And what you are seeing with that person is probably their worst, right? They have crumbled completely. So if they have crumbled, what is it that you can do? Ultimately, when we talk about resilience, the final ball rests with us. And this sounds that, Sangeeta, what is this yaar, koi bhi humko aake kuch bhi kar dega, and you're saying ultimately it is our responsibility. But I want to be very clear, and as a therapist, as a psychologist, as somebody who works in this field and has been working for some time and seeing various things, ultimately the ball comes back to us and rests with us. So what is it that we do in response to that will define how our life will move forward. So if that person has been dishonest, can do we take on that person? Yes, we do. But how do we take that person on? Is it that we are going to look for revenge? Is it that we are going to alienate that person? Or is it that we can have a conversation and see with maybe with that person or ourselves to say that, is this person worthy of still being connected to? Has this person harmed us in such a way that we need to move away from them? So these are all the decisions which will have to be taken. And this is what the agility factor of what we're talking about, and the compassion factor for ourselves and for others comes into being.
Thank you. Thank you for the great answer. The next question I'll take is from Mr. Utkarsh. First of all, he wants to thank you for the great session. I'm really happy for getting a great book suggestion, Man Searched for Meaning. Next question I'll take in is, to forgive is a good trait. I think it's just a suggestion, or?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
To forgive is a good trait. Mr. Ajay says that.
Absolutely. Let me tell you, when we forgive somebody, we are not changing their lives, we are changing our lives.
Very true.
And anything that we have to do with our mind also has to do with spirituality, right? So ultimately, what does spirituality tell us? That especially if we are angry, there's a great saying by Buddha, and I was talking about this in my anger management session, which I did yesterday only at my workplace, that there's a and as I was saying, visualizing is very strong. So there's a visual where a man is holding a hot coal in his hand. And Buddha has said that holding on to anger and resentment is like holding a hot coal before we throw it at somebody else. Because the first person who actually gets hurt or burnt is ourselves. So, visualize this every time you are angry with somebody, because that anger, that resentment that we are holding is actually going to hurt ourselves more than anybody else.
Thank you. That's a well understanding thing, and lovely to hear that. The next question I'll take is from Mr. Abikendu. He says, how to cope with the captain of a sinking ship syndrome?
Very good question, Abhikendu. And I think, most of you over here probably have a sense of resonance with that. And that is the thing about leadership, right? What is leadership? And especially in crisis, you know, anybody who's a leader is dealing with a situation where you're managing so many things. You're managing your finances, you're managing your people, you're managing your family, you're trying to deal with policies which are changing, you're trying to influence so many things, you're dealing with customers, so many things are happening. And the feeling that you and only you can save this ship from sinking, and that if you don't save this ship, then you are the only person who is responsible, is a very big feeling. So first thing is to understand that you are human too. In these circumstances, leaders have to understand that they are human beings too. You're as human as the last person down in your office who comes to open the door every day in the morning. So that is first thing. Second is that, if the ship is sinking, what all can you do to save the people and allow the ship to sink? Again, the possibility versus probability answers. What is the worst case scenario of what can happen here? And what can emerge from the ashes of something that might completely die, right? So the only thing we know for sure is that change is the only constant. And today, your ship was sinking. Today, you might have seen hope with things beginning to open up. Maybe some of you have even come to a point where even that is not hopeful. But what is it that you can do to do the best that you can do? So does it mean that if you've had to let go of people, you're feeling guilty? Yes. But how many people's jobs have you been able to help save? How many people can you bring back to the workplace? These are all questions which you need to think about with looking forward and letting go of guilt. Guilt is a very, very negative emotion. And, remember that you are doing the best that you can do in the circumstances. When you compare yourself to the leaders of the world and see what they are doing, they are also grappling. And are they being able to do everything that the world may expect from them? No. So you cannot give your you cannot sell the dream to everybody around you. You cannot give them what life was like before this happened. But you can give yourself and other people something to hope for through a change. And change is the only constant. I don't know if I've answered your question.
Yeah, I think quite elaborately. Well, I have a similar question from my side. It's okay to say deal with it, but when it's a question of livelihood, then it's not easy to avoid stress and anxiety. What can we do in such circumstances?
Similarly, Anuj, as I was saying, that when we think that we have to have answers, we think the answer that we must get or we must give to somebody else is the ideal answer, right? But as we know, in these circumstances there is no ideal. We are probably looking at the best of what we can find in this current circumstances. So just like when giving you an example of somebody who has a heart attack, right? And they get the doctor does surgery on them. And after they do surgery, very often what do they tell the patient? That we have done the surgery, but please remember that your heart is now functioning at 70%, 30%, 40%, whatever it is. Correct? So
Yeah.
it is like that. So no solution might be the ideal solution. So you do the best that you can, and the best that you can vary. But as long as you will do it with your best intent, you can sleep at night. If you're going to do something which for example I was watching this documentary about Vijay Mallya on Netflix, where it talked about how he was having a 60th birthday party while he had not even paid his people, and that led to his ultimate downfall, right? So taking that example to say that how have you done enough for the people around you so that you can sleep at night? If you have taken care of your people as best as you can, not as best as you always used to take care of them, but as best as you can, then it is okay. This crisis is teaching us that whatever it is that we had thought ourselves to be, we will have to look at everything differently.
Thank you for the answer. So the next question I'll take is from us. Astha, during the pandemic, many people resort to the hustle culture and end up in the vicious cycle of toxic productivity, leading to burnout. How can one build resilience to this?
So why is it that people are doing this? Let us understand, right? Because they feel that if they don't show that how that they are useful, that they are productive, that they are essential, then somehow they will become irrelevant, right? That is the fear. So first thing is important for us to understand that what is the what is the feeling behind the action that is being taken. So in this case, it is clearly the first feeling is a sense of insecurity and fear that if I'm not constantly working, then somehow I will become irrelevant, right? So first thing to address is that, to say that we are all doing the best that we can, and just by literally being like that, like the hamster on that wheel, where the hamster is just running and the wheel is just going round and round in the same place, by doing just that, that is the only thing that will happen, and as you're saying, burnout will happen. So how can we create an environment for people to feel less stressed, right? How can we make, in our organizations, how can we tell them that at this moment, this is a moment when no matter what you do, you cannot change this so much better. So what I'm expecting is this much from you. If you can do this, then let us get on with life. And for yourself, I would like to, there's this beautiful concept, and there's a book, again, another suggestion of a book by New York Times columnist. His name is Greg McQueen, McKeown. I think that's his name. And the book is called Essentialism. And what it basically talks about is that, how do we distill our lives to find what is really most important to us, and how we focus on that, and how by focusing on that, how we are able to actually build our own inner strength and confidence to be able to actually remove this sense of fear, remove the sense of inadequacy. And maybe, what you do through that is find a completely life-changing thing. Let me give you my own example that, as in my introduction, Anuji was saying that I have worked in corporate communications. I worked in corporate communication for many years till I started working in safety, until I found my calling, which is what I do today, right? And I was unafraid to let go of my corporate communications career, which was probably at that time seen as a more high powered career than working in safety and well being, which honestly 5 years ago nobody cared about, right? But that was my passion, and I decided to work in that. Today it is the thing which is most sought after. That is something else. But did my 5 years not go beautifully? They went beautifully. I've had the most absolutely exhilarating time in my work during these 5 years because I have done things that I'm passionate about. So dealing with your insecurity and using this time to find yourself, it is a great time to find yourself. So try and do that.
Thank you. I wish we had you a bit more earlier so we could have got enough time to find ourselves.
There's
Anyways,
always time, Anoop. There's always time.
no, we're starting up another week's time, so probably we're rushing now for
Yes.
restarting. But anyways, it's a good time. And I would request another thing from all the guests. If you can recommend us any more 2 or 3 books, you can just probably give in the names now, or you can send it to us. We'll probably add it into the presentation itself, and then share it with the guests to the books which you feel are good to be referred in.
Sure.
So I'll take it the next question from Mr. Utkarsh again. How to be the bigger giving person while not being afraid of being exploited?
So this speaks very beautifully to the concept of vulnerability, right? So again, to quote another, wonderful exponent of this particular concept in the world, her name is Brené Brown, and you can look at her books and you can also look at her TED Talks. And she speaks about this concept, about saying that vulnerability is a very, very, in fact, we tend to think that if we show our softer side, people will take advantage of us. But actually, that is not so, because the minute we show our humane side, of course, with a certain amount of balance. So just because we are saying vulnerable does not mean that you go to your teams and tell them about how, mere ghar mein ye ho raha hai and my wife is feeling like this, or any of that. But just being open and allowing people to share what they are going through, and to some extent sharing, like I shared with you just now, right? My career changed completely, right? So sharing with other people a little bit about, giving them a glimpse of yourself, and then picking up from there and setting boundaries as well in a kind and empathetic way will make sure that you'll find the right balance. So instead of being a hard boiled egg or turning completely mushy, how to be coffee is really the secret.
I think Utkarsh has got the answer. Utkarsh, in case you are not clear with the answer so far, you can probably raise your hand. I can probably unmute you and you can ask him the question in details. Kindly unmute Utkarsh in case he wants to say something. Yeah, Utkarsh, can you speak in?
I'm glad, Utkarsh. I hope it helped you.
Okay. Uh, because he's put up another question. When we tend to give, there might be a scope of exploitation sometimes. So anyways, I think he's
Absolutely,
got
yeah.
he's got the answer to it. Uh, now, I have another question. How can we plan for the future in these uncertain times?
So, Anupji, how can we plan? We can't plan too far ahead. We know that very clearly, right? I mean, let us accept that. Acceptance is a very big thing as well, right? So, kitna plan karenge? Till yesterday, you thought that you could not open up. Suddenly, you're
Yeah,
finding you can open up. Great change, right? But
yeah.
there could be a different change where everything is, the cases are going up very high, and suddenly the government is stopping everything. So, how much can you plan? So plan we must, but plan with a certain amount of caution that we can only control this much and no more. And if we can't control that, that is okay. Make plan B, plan C, like we did today for this session itself, right? But ultimately, what was the last worst case scenario, for example, in this session, that even despite using plan B, suppose even the phone did not work, what was plan C? Plan C was that the session did not happen, and maybe today we could not have had this conversation, right? And I would have had to deal with disappointment. You would have had to deal with members saying that kya kiya Anuj ji, aap itna plan bhi nahi kar sakte hain, huh? But ultimately what will happen, 5 days later people will forget and they will move on, correct? So always think about worst case scenario whenever you are making plans, so that you know that worst case scenario is never as bad as what you think it will be. That thing about facing up, planning, possibility, probability, and facing up, very powerful tool in planning for the future.
Thank you. So I'll probably take in the last question. What measures can we take to deal with the stress if we, our loved ones or team members develop COVID?
Yeah, so I think the biggest fear that people have is that what happens if COVID happens to us, right? And that is a very real fear. And so the first thing, of course, is that we take all the precautions. Second is to avoid this thought ki why me? Yeah, because what is happening now? Even despite people taking all the precautions, still people are getting COVID, right? So what is it that we can do instead of saying why me? Life is so unfair. To accept that it has happened, to deal with it, to be kind to the people who are going through it, to support them. So family we will support, no problem. But will we support our colleagues? Will we support our teammates in the same way? Will we give them enough time to recover, to come back to work with empathy? Will we virtually be there for them throughout this time? So all these things are part of the thing when we say that we need to be some part of something bigger than ourselves. So COVID times, if this was the last question, to just say that COVID times is teaching us that man is just a small speck, and there is only this much that we can control, and so we should only control that much. And secondly, it is teaching us that we need to be so human and so kind and compassionate to ourselves and to other people. So I think these are some of the big lessons which are coming out from this pandemic, and I hope that we are all going to learn these lessons.
Thank you so very much, Ms. Sangeeta. I think it was very interactive and very detailed session about resilience. Now, may I request Mr. Anand, Flight Lieutenant Anand Lamade to be unmuted to give a vote of thanks to Ms. Sangeeta for the great session. Flight Lieutenant Anand Lamade. Sir, can you hear us? Mr. Anand Lamade, can you hear us? I think he's not able to either connect or some issues there. May I request Mr. Rajiv Chalnapurkar to give a word of thanks, please? Mr. Rajiv Chalnapurkar.
Yeah. Sangeeta ji, it was very inspiring. I think you came absolutely on time. In fact, we all wanted to have a dose of encouragement, and it was such a wonderful presentation and interaction. In fact, I was quite happy to see all our members were interacting, and you were satisfying each and every question. So I take this opportunity to thank you very much on behalf of Indian Association of Amusement and Attractions, IAAPI. And I would also like to thank our chairman, Anuj Sarin, committee chairman for the training, for organizing this wonderful session. I want to thank the office, Padma, and the team also for supporting this wonderful presentation. Thank you very much, madam.
Thank you so much, Rajiv ji and Anuj ji, Anil ji, Padma. Thank you so very much. It was a wonderful opportunity. This is my passion, and I really hope that it was helpful. And also wishing all of you a lot of, for the opening, Lord, all the best. May the amusement parks come back and bring more joy to our lives, and maybe be able to get, I will not never get on a ride, but may everybody else be able to get on the rides and really, really have a wonderful time. Thank you so very much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Rajiv ji. Thank you, Rajiv ji, for a kind word. Thank you, Sangeeta ma'am. May I request Ms. Ajay to kindly share a few words on opening of the parks in case he wants to say something about it. Mr. Ajay, please. Can you hear us, Mr. Ajay? Padma, could you please check in case he's still there with us or he's left the meeting? Yeah, he's there, Mr. Ajay. I think there's some connectivity issue with him. So anyways, thank you everyone for the great session. Thank you, Ms. Sangeeta, and thank you everyone for attending in the session. So let's continue with the presentation now. So friends, the up next session, we'll probably get back to you shortly on the next upcoming session very soon. Thank you once again. It is solely because of your interest and participation that the webinar series has continued to attract such high numbers and has become a useful platform where ideas, knowledge, and experience are being shared in. As example, the current session, today's session was a great motivation session for us. See you all virtually again soon. And thank you once again. You can all visit and subscribe and like the IAAPI's YouTube channel. The link is given here with you. And in fact, I would like to, on behalf of IAAPI, I like to congratulate everyone and wish you all the best for opening of the parks on 15th of October. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Anuj.